Hey, it's Paul Rayburn here. Just getting settled back in after Valuation Expo in Vegas. So it was awesome to connect and meet up with some of my existing connections that I've never met with in person. So, but I'm also want to provide a update or just share a bit more on our Shiny dashboard, our built-in R based on the community of asset analysts, George Dell's group. There's some of our work with that myself and my son Landon have been doing in our app. So give you the screenshot here. There, Val Expo. Yeah, that's where we were. We connected. Got to connect with John Faris. Awesome, thanks. Awesome to meet you, John, and a bunch of other members. But there's a cameo shot of Paul and John. Excited to meet, I guess. Anyway, so I've run the I got the app running in Rstudio here, so that's running here. There's some of the packages that we've got running in there. So thanks to all the contributors that make Rstudio, Rposit, and the whole community. Outside of our community of asset analyst members, there is a larger, much larger community of data scientists and coders who are making so much of this possible. Super excited about what's going on out there. So we've built this dashboard, which is probably an understatement, a program running in Shiny application. So here I've just plugged in some subject information here. We've got this tab over here, so I can hit this one here. I would hit load data again if I was rebooting up this file, and all this stuff is saved in here. So if I closed it down and wanted to run the application, this is file specific as well. So so I'm just going to skip over some of the steps here, following George Dell's process. It's the assignment data frame, the competitive market segment, and we also talk about the optimal information frame. So in my way of thinking, so the assignment data frame, as George Dell would put it, that's all the data you think you'll ever need. Bring it all in and start analyzing it. From there, you can filter it down and get rid of inconsistent data. Competitive market segment. We've got some code and packages running in here that I'm going to skip over for this presentation, and I'm going to talk about my subject here. So we've got some information showing up about this property and about this market. This is all the data that's in there, and so the red line is the subject where it falls within that market. But this is a unique property here. So that was just resetting. This is all the data I brought in. I had to go 10 years back to find enough information to draw at least some conclusions. So here is all that data, and going back 10 years, you get mislabeled, entered locations. So we run a package in there that geocodes the correct addresses, and so I'll get into that here. I'm just going to turn a layer off that makes it a little bit easier to, the heat map takes up a fair bit and my computer is not really that powerful. So here is the market. So here is all the sales. Now this blue lines here is a riparian zone. Also falls right within a flood zone. They're all part of the same map and almost lay over each other, but this is the riparian zone because my subject is located within the riparian zone. So effectively, it's a legal non-conforming property. It has a covenant on title that restricts if it ever gets damaged more than 60%, it cannot be rebuilt in its current location. It's got to be somehow moved, relocated to fit and be out of the riparian zone, which is in this case very, very limited. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I've got a few other comps. Now some of these are going to disappear, you'll see as we go through the data, but these guys here, their improvements are right within that zone, and those are the ones I focused on. So I'm going to show you this here in a second. So here's all the data pulled in. I got a bunch of lakeshore properties in here that I shouldn't have. It was just sort of an oversight when I pulled it from the MLS, but it doesn't matter. I can fix that up. I can go up here, and we've got these filters here. Sorry, just going to close up this tab because we don't need that. We've got the check group filters here. I just went through and quickly, I've got a whole bunch. The MLS has a whole bunch of labelings for what's lakefront and not. So I'd have to unselect all those. So I'm going to click use the filter. And then I'm going to filter the data. And you're going to see things change here a bit. Now this is just sizes and year built and all that, so it's probably not going to change a whole lot. I'm going to take a minute here because it's a really big data set, but there you go. Okay, so that updated. Now we see a lot of the plots, the points went away. We still got a few outliers in here. Let's just see if they disappear when we filter down the date ranges. I already manually plugged these in here. Sorry, not the date ranges. Sorry, the some physical characteristics about year built, lot size, or square footage and lot size. So we can hit the filter button again. Watch that all update. Watch some of that disappear. So now that becomes a lot more conforming data set. You'll see here I've got some trend lines turned on here. I've got a 3-month rolling average and 3-month median, and that's these lines in here. And then I've got a smooth trend line, the best fit trend line. They can play around with that a bit to, you don't want to over fit it. But I've definitely found that the markets do not move like this, like the average and median prices. Benchmark prices are a little bit better, but they're still, they don't resolve generally, quality, condition, specific site appeals, and all that. So quite like you can see here, here's a point. You can see a void in the higher end data here. This is the peak of 2022. Things just stopped selling in there, but it doesn't mean the values dropped, just the average price dropped, right? So more of this lower end stuff, you can see less of the red dots in here and more of the blue dots and the other colors that are not present up here. So those are neighborhoods that are lower average and median prices and lower overall appeal that are, selling down in here. So that's pulling these lines down more than, that wouldn't be fair to apply this rate of adjustment to these properties, or even these properties. So, quite often you'll see that these are actually climbing and these are staying relatively steady. Now, some markets are different. That's where your domain expertise comes in. So, I'm not going to try, I don't want to get into that but too much, but there's just a lot of discussion about supporting adjustments and not making market condition adjustments. And it's not as simple as it sounds. So I'm going to try and keep this relatively short without getting into all of that, but I'm happy to discuss that in more detail. So I've got the smooth line fitting pretty good in here, and you can see, I'm just going to do a little zoom out and a little zoom in. This is a really long time period, but let's make it look like a shorter period, Let's just look at about the last year and a half or so or something like that and see what that looks like. Now you can see where my smooth line is coming out here right between the mean and the median. Quite often that is when you've got that line fitting reasonably well. That's about where it sort of generally comes in. There's the mean or the average. There's the median. Anyways, it just helps to try and adjust all this data using a polynomial. Would be difficult. I don't think you'd ever get one to properly fit. So that would be ill-advised. And same with a linear trend. Let's just see here. Let's just fit. Just get this to fit the data. I can turn on a neighborhood. Oh, sorry, no, not that one. Okay, here's a linear line going to pop up here. So the linear line's also not going to, be relevant. So what is going to be relevant? Well, maybe you try a few different models, and you can look at some repeat and paired sales and all that. So, we can try and get that to fit a little better. If you want to try and have it fit more like the median, the average, the problem is you're going to find your end points and your current point is going to maybe skew more than you'd like it to. So, you could do that, but maybe draw some conclusion about how to correct for that. But that's not, so the point here is to get everything adjusted. I'm going to look at a much larger data set here to get this resolved. And I know that there's going to be that is smooth line is subjective. I mean, and I can adjust this by just moving this span, but that's no less subjective than just using a linear trend for this kind of data. So if your data is looking like this, if it's effectively looking like a square box, so over this period, and you're using a linear trend in there, maybe a polynomial, I don't know how you'd ever get that to fit. Your lines would be being forced, and they can often be quite a bit out. So I initially in this program I had it set up here to have multiple periods so that I could do I could split this up into 4, 6. I had it set up for like 8 periods for doing these long ones. And I would find that as you went through and adjusted these dates, and I can adjust the order of the polynomial in there, they would be all over the map, be no consistency. So that's for you to decide in your analysis, but it's a discussion. But again, the pressure is on to make condition adjustments. So the importance is, take a class like George Dell's class where you can really get in and start learning about all of these types of issues, and you'll get to be a little bit more of an expert in your market domain, and you can start studying how these come out. So, okay, I just wanted to add a little bit in here. So I've got this market refined down a little bit more, and I just wanted to point out and have a little more discussion about these, whether you use a smooth trend, a linear trend, a rolling average, median, or whatever it is that you want to use. You look at these periods in here where you have, a shift in trends. Now, did this market shift in almost 25% over, 6 whatever months that was, on the median price, let alone shifted that much, even more than the average? So that's probably speaking to a difference in what are the medians in those markets. What's the shift? Okay, so I just wanted to say, the whole subject of when we're not making adjustments, and I'm not defending absolutely every appraiser out there, but I know plenty of times when I would come up with these types of markets, and there's all these shifts, I might choose comps that are sort of just on either side of this trend, and you could see that there's not a huge shift if we're sort of picking stuff that's sort of in the mid-range of that, avoiding stuff that was selling in those peaks or valleys, and then so not having to make an adjustment that would be difficult to support in these periods here. So that's one other instance where appraisers might not be adjusting when everybody's out there waving their arms and flapping that we're not making adjustments. So I know that I have done that on occasion, just avoided those ones that were at the peaks or the valleys, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, if there's still an overall trend adjustment to be made, then yes, you can kind of pick up on that. But again, it just that gets into, more, it's more complicated than just simply running a linear trend on a small set of data. Unless you're working in a market where you've got a lot of conformity and very similar properties, then you're going to have nice tight, where these dots are within the width of my mouse here on a line, right? Then fine. But if you're dealing with a market like this, then that that makes things more complicated. So let's not lose sight of trying to help lift each other up and get to the bottom of all of this. And so anyways, yeah, thanks for this little input here. So again, back to keeping this short. So okay, one of the quick little interesting thing I want to show you here. So here's two, I just sort of filtered it down to 2 markets, and you might look at this and a trained eye will not look at this, and you'll say, oh, this climbed a lot faster than this one, unless you sit down here and start doing math on this. But if you want a quick way to do this, I'm just going to go in here and I turned the y-axis on. So I put this into a log scale on the y-axis. And now you can see that these generally trended similarly. That's to do with the scale, visual scale effect, where the bottom portion of the chart is, let's just get this to a standard scale here. Oh no, standard scale. Yeah. Okay, just gonna flip back to turn the y-axis off. Now some of the neighborhoods I'm just gonna turn those off just to make things a little less confusing. Oops. And just scale this here, or just get everything to the 0 scale. So from 100 to 200K, well that's doubling. And 200, 300, that's 50%. So that as you climb up, well, now from, this top half here, it's from visually here, I'm looking at about 650 to, 875 or something like that. So that's like about 25% down there, about 33% up here, but it looks like it's like, 3 times, but it's only, a few percent higher that it did climb. So that's why I like to have that. So when I'm doing presentation, sometimes if I'm showing markets like this that have different beginning points, now if they start at the same point, well then it's relevant. But the difference is that this one started at a higher point. So when you see markets that look like that, yeah, you might, it depends on who your audience is. You might want to use a tool like that to present that graphically. So on the log scale, so that it, it's a little bit easier to understand. Again, it depends on the data you're looking at. So again, just a tool. Okay, so I went in, I made that initial data set, I created my model, I adjusted everything to current. And I'm only going through a few of the tools that we have available in here, and we don't have to use everything we've got. But so then I'll just sort of go to so I created a data set with those guys in there. Here's all the ones in the Riparian Zone setback. Okay, I called it, we labeled it improvements. I've just got to change the code on that to change that, or it's one of these things that we can add in that as a tool in the dashboard to be able to change those labels. But that's how we can create the data set from within this tool. Okay, so, and I do just want to show the this option here. I've got this neighborhood here that is certainly appears to be an outlier. Starting here, it's definitely climbing. We don't need the log scale to figure that out. It's starting down here, there's outliers in this market. And if I turn off everything else other than that, you can see there's not really a lot of data sets, and I happen to know it's not a relevant market. So I can go in here. Got rid of Lakeshore ones already, and use the filter, get rid of that. Okanagan Landing, I can get rid of that. Oops. Half barrel, that's gonna update that. Get rid of that. Okay, so just filtering that out again. It's a pretty big data set, so it's a little slow. So okay, so now here's a more conforming data sets. You can see those markets generally trended pretty similarly, and I could even get rid of this other neighborhood here because it's a fair bit higher than where my subject market is in this one here, this Harwood here. So I could filter these out by map too. So I could go map. I happen to know all those outlier ones for the most part are up here in this section. I'm going to turn off the heat map for a second, and I'm just going to pause. We're just going to go around. I happen to know that all of this is not really relevant market, and crop data, remove. Okay, so now that is going to get rid of a lot of this stuff up here. So it's still trending a bit higher. So I could drill on that and try and figure out what, if I know geographically where those are, that they're the reason. Okay, anyways, so you get the point here. You can have multiple ways to filter your data down, and then I'm not sure, did I point this out? You can actually, so we geocode in the location. Now you can see when I initially mentioned that some of these properties were going to disappear, a couple of them disappeared, but so we geocode in the correct location. You may or may not need this or have this option in your market. So we correct the MLS to the local government data source for the accurate addresses. And also these lot lines come from the same tool. So I can actually see the lot lines, because when I'm looking on my MLS, I don't get this level of detail. I just see the dot is and assume it's in the right location. So that's that. I'm going to show you. I went through here and created another neighborhood in and around here, and then I plotted that out as another data set, which I'm just going to show you the results here just to speed this thing up a little bit. So that was roughly in this area here, because two of those comparables are in here. Now this area, I happen to know that they're generally lesser condition properties, not as well maintained and all that. So I sort of went through and created, because I have these in that data set, and that is here. So here's just that properties in the riparian zone. Here is that neighborhood I call the Lower Mission Hill. Like there's a custom label that I gave it when I created it. You can see that it's lower than the average of the market trend line and lower than my improved properties in the subject neighborhood. So I went and did some further analysis on this. So these 2 points, I got one, this property sold twice, I happened to find out. And it was renovated, significantly renovated here. It was in okay condition here, but here they spent quite a bit and totally refinished it inside and out. And adding this up here, you've got, probably about 25,000 or so here, and probably about the same there, 50s. There's 50, 60, 70 grand, somewhere in there. So clearly, this example would give some evidence that there is value for these properties, that the market is willing to pay for that. It's not a lot of evidence, but I got another one here. Now this one is not, I manually put this in here because this property, it's not a duplex or anything, it's just a legal non-conforming suite. But I added this manually here just to show it where it approximately sold there. It's not pulling on this line. So this line is being pulled down by these two lower value properties. So that's worth noting and considering when you reconcile this. But I think the key here is where these fall within the trend line. And, I can see that this here property, when I went in and costed this out, I used the cost approach on a whole bunch of properties. And, this one, the land value came out a little bit lower than I expected. It wasn't, and I contacted the agents, both the buyers and the sellers, even though it was 2 years ago or whatever. They recalled and they both said no, nobody really ever raised the concern about the riparian issue, or that there was any problem with the property itself. It just, there's variation in sales values. Lots of discussion about that going on these days too. Sale price isn't maybe, the accurate price. But anyways, okay, so trying to keep this short. So I was able to create a custom data set, analyze it in the market, adjusted all the current using a reasonably reliable trend line, analyze the results. From this tool, from this trend line, I created a condition adjustment rate. I'll just go there for a second. So these were sort of the more current sales of the general market. I was able to cost those out, applied the date of sale adjustment. Here's that one property that's close by the subject. Value came out a little bit lower. This one here was baffling. I just took it out of my analysis. It just sold at a fair bit less, and the extracted land value was quite a bit less than I expected. Everything else kind of made sense. Extracted price per acre, another metric to look at there, a bit of variety, but a general consistent trend. So that is that in a nutshell. So, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or ideas, or you'd like to drill down on some of those concepts a little bit, I appreciate the opportunity at all. So for all those people that I met at Val Expo, some new connections, I'm excited to show you more about what we're doing, what the community of asset analysts are doing, and some of the work that's going on in the POSIT PBC, Public Benefit Corporation, the work that they're doing for Rstudio. The Python community is a part of that. Just all these packages and so many opportunities, so much options available to really drill down on our data and do this is the stuff. Like this was, this is a pretty extreme example. But this is the kind of complex issues we should be able to drill down on and resolve. This is, and some of the spatial mapping tools, and start getting into being able to analyze different zoning and effects on properties, topography. There's all kinds of tools available to help us out to deal with these more complex markets. And I think for the lending industry, appraising has really been downplayed as just it's simple, keep it simple, stupid, do basic work, take low fees, and that's led to major problems. So we got to get back on top of our game. I'm really excited. I'm hopeful that we can all come together and build upon these kinds of tools and take things to the next level. So thanks again. Thanks for tuning in, and please stay in touch, reach out, ask questions, hard ones. Let's have the hard ones. Come on, you guys. Somebody's going to have some tough questions that I'm not going to be able to answer, and I'm going to lean on my community to help me answer those. So we're all going to be leaning on each other to take this to the next level. So thanks again. Have a great evening.